The safety guard is preset at the factory, but you may need to adjust it so it can fully protect your fingers during operation. Always make sure the grinder is unplugged before adjusting the safety guard. To adjust the safety guard, first loosen the set screw slightly. Then push the guard into the desired position, making sure it fully protects your fingers from the chainsaw disc. Finally, retighten the set screw. Just be sure not to over-tighten it. The slit or opening in the safety guard does not have to be completely closed, or the two sides pulled together, for the guard to be tight and secure. Remember, always make sure the guard cannot move freely before turning the grinder on. Always make sure the grinder is unplugged before changing the disc. First, insert the hex key into the center screw in the middle of the grinder's head. Press the locking button on the underside of the grinder and simultaneously turn the hex key counterclockwise. The locking button will click down to let you know the screw is loosening properly. Once the screw is out, remove the attachment washer and any disc already in the grinder. Put the screw and washer into the middle of the new disc and align the screw with the hole in the middle of the grinder's head. To lock the disc into place, press the locking button while simultaneously turning the hex key clockwise to tighten the screw. Remember not to over-tighten it. Make sure the disc is secure and cannot fall out before turning on the grinder. Always make sure that the safety guard is positioned to fully protect your fingers before turning the electric hoof knife on. For the most control over the tool, it is easiest to lightly grip the grinder just below the gear head, with the tool resting on your fingertips. This will help the grinder feel balanced in your hand. Avoid blocking the air vents and try not to press the locking button while trimming, as this can cause the disc to chatter. When assembling the 4-tooth chain disc, you will need the 4-tooth chain, 2 attachment discs, and the attachment washer from the tool. Start by noting the shape and texture of the attachment discs. One side will appear rough and concaved, while the other side is smooth and dome-shaped. Each attachment also contains 2 straight edges along the centering hole. The attachment washer contains the same straight edges, which are used to align the discs. Notice the placement of the tooth and the raker of the 4-tooth chain. Start by placing one of the attachment discs on an even surface with the rough side facing up. Then, place the chain on top of the bottom disc. Place the next attachment disc with the rough side toward the chain. Making minor adjustments will secure the chains between the 2 discs. Be sure to align straight edges in both the attachment discs and the attachment washer when assembling the 4-tooth chain disc. When you have the disc and washer assembled, place the set screw through the centering hole and attach to the head of the tool. Tighten the set screw using your Allen wrench, but be sure not to over-tighten. Using the electric hoof knife with a chain that has been properly sharpened makes trimming safer and easier, as well as extends the life of the chain. Sharpen the blade after about 20 to 25 trims. This takes a couple of minutes and will help the blade last longer. It doesn't hurt to sharpen the blade after each use. A diamond-coated chainsaw file is required to sharpen the tungsten carbide teeth. Before you begin, make sure the disc is clean and free from oil, dirt, and debris. Inspect the chain, paying specific attention to the tungsten carbide teeth. If any of the teeth are missing, chipped, broken, or bent, you'll need to replace the chain as it could be dangerous to use. Set your file in the tungsten carbide coated notch on the front of the tooth. The curve of the file should exactly fit the curve of the tooth, and the top of the file should be flush with the top of the tooth. Hold the file at the same angle that the tooth was originally filed. Slide the file across the face of the tooth, using a moderate twisting motion to discharge metal chips or fillings. Push the file from the longer side of the tooth to the shorter side. Check the clearance of the rakers, which are curved, hook-shaped links between the teeth. They should clear each tooth by about 1/10 of an inch. File down any raker that sits too high. When you first get your electric hoof knife, it's best to practice on a piece of wood before using it on a live hoof. We recommend you use a 4x4 block of cedar or redwood, as their densities most closely resemble that of a hoof. To practice, first position yourself to the block of wood like it's a hoof. Remember, never turn the tool on when the disc is in direct contact with the wood, as this can cause harm. Holding the grinder properly, slightly angle the disc perpendicular to the wood. Gently pull the grinder closer toward you as if you were trimming a hoof. Use a smooth pulling motion and don't chop at the wood. The disc is designed to flow easily across the hoof without any resistance. There's no need to force the disc while trimming. Apply light trimming while making a cut, as the disc will do the work for you. This feature helps to decrease the wrist, hand, and arm pain traditionally experienced during trimming. The electric hoof knife will cut backwards as well. The motion is the same, but the back of the grinder shaft will prevent you from laying the disc too flat. You can control the depth of any cut by using a combination of the disc angle, speed you move the disc across the surface, and pressure you apply to the disc. If you hold the disc at a 90-degree angle but apply no pressure, the disc will barely cut. If you hold the disc almost flat, the disc will barely cut. This angle provides you with a lot of control, but is not practical for trimming hooves as it removes too little material. Keep practicing on the wood until you find the best angle, speed, and pressure that you're comfortable using. Always remember to keep your hands away from the spinning disc while the grinder is turned on. Don't reach underneath or attempt to remove material while the disc is rotating. After you turn the grinder off, wait until the disc has stopped spinning before putting the tool down. And don't jam the disc into wood to stop it rotating prematurely.
Always make sure the grinder is switched off before you plug it in. Always wear eye protection and heavy-duty gloves while trimming. The 4-tooth chainsaw disc rotates at 13,000 RPMs and throws off almond-shaped slivers at high speeds that can hurt your eyes if you're not wearing proper eye protection.
When you're using the electric hoof knife, one of the important things is to make sure that you have a grounded extension cord. There's two ways that you might go about doing that. Number one is that if you have a GFI plug in your barn, you want to make sure that you're using that. If not, we suggest that you get a GFI extension cord plug. You can get them at local home improvement stores. They're fairly inexpensive, but you do want to be able to have that cord. For safety reasons, GFI, that's the only way to go with the extension cord. When you're using the electric hoof knife, cord management is going to be a big part of setting up your work area. We've got the cord plugged into the GFI. Now it's time to place the cord outside of your work area. So I want to take this cord and take it on it way outside and bring it back up through the middle. That places me between the cord and the horse. That's the safest way to be able to set up your cord. When it's time to trim the backside of the horse, you'll want to make sure you turn the horse around and not take your cord around and behind the horse. Safety first.
Always make sure you are wearing proper eye protection, gloves, and long-legged pants or chaps during operation. Never turn the tool on when the disc is in direct contact with the hoof. Before trimming with the electric hoof knife, make sure the hoof is secured and free of any dirt and debris. You should always position the chainsaw disc at a slight angle to the hoof. The flatter you hold the disc, the less aggressive the cut will be, and the lighter you trim, the more control you will have over the tool. Remember, do not chop and do not force the disc. The electric hoof knife can be used to fix ulcers and abscesses. The best way to learn how to use the electric hoof knife for fixing laminitis problems is to just practice different techniques as you encounter different problems. It will not take long before you are comfortable using the electric hoof knife to perform all kinds of hoof care tasks. Always use caution when fixing laminitis and hoof disease problems. There are two ways to apply blocks to the hoof of a cow to promote healing. You can apply the block to the claw that you have performed the corrective procedure on, or you can apply the block to the claw that does not have the laminitis problem. To apply a block in either of these situations, first you must perform the corrective procedure. Then, use extremely lightly vertical cuts and move at a 45-degree angle across the claw to create a diagonal line pattern. This will roughen up the hoof and help the glue bond to the hoof more easily. If you must apply a block to the claw that has had the corrective procedure performed on it, you can use the electric hoof knife to gently scoop out part of the block for a better fit and to promote faster healing. Holding the block up to the claw, mark the block where you need to make the cut. Then, holding the block flat in your hand, gently pull the electric hoof knife along the wood to carve out a space that matches the size of the injury. If you were required to remove a lot of hoof to treat the problem, we recommend you use an antibiotic ointment and a bandage wrap to protect the hoof from further infection. This will keep the hoof clean and allow it to heal. After 3 to 5 days, you can cut the bandage off. You can also use the electric hoof knife to remove a block and its glue from the hoof by running the disc over the wood and shaving off the block until only the clean, healed hoof remains.
From horses to sheep, cows, goats, and more, proper hoof health is an important aspect of caring for an animal.
When people began to domesticate the animals, they also began to take them out of their natural habitat. In a natural habitat, the animals basically take care of their hooves just through natural wear and tear. If you have a beef cow that's on the range, they're able to wear that hoof down as they roam through the fields. But a dairy cow, on the other hand, is confined. Their feed is a highly enriched protein, so their hooves grow faster than normal. And because of the fact that they do not have the ability to wear it down, you have to trim that hoof. Cows and horses and sheep and goats, pigs, anything with a hoof that's confined has to have the hoof trimmed by man.
While extremely important to their overall health, hoof trimming can be a demanding and strenuous task.
A lot of people in the United States maintain their own horses. The problem with a horse owner that's trimming his own, it basically gets back to it's hard to keep the hand tools sharp, and it is extremely hard physically to make those cuts on that hoof. So unfortunately what happens is that an owner will sometimes delay trimming that hoof. Proper hoof care dictates that you should trim that horse's hoof every 6 weeks. But because it's so hard to do, people delay that. And when they delay that, then they really are subjecting that horse to problems with their hoof. The performance of the horse is declined. It leads to the hoof getting diseased. So what my tool does is it encourages the horse owner to trim more frequently because it's so much easier to do. Less material, less time, less effort, healthier horse.
DeWolf & Associates, creators of the electric hoof knife, have made the first and only power tool to be designed, manufactured, and successfully marketed to the hoof trimming industries around the world.
My tool, using a 4-tooth chainsaw blade, is still used exactly like a hand tool. The bonus to our tool is the fact that it cuts in any direction. With a hand tool, you basically can only cut in one direction, and that is a pulling motion towards you. With my tool, you can cut forwards, backwards, sideways. It just gives you a lot more cutting ability to do that. The electric hoof knife is a revolutionary tool. Our tool was designed with 4 elements in mind: the shape, the size, the weight, and the power. We had to design a tool that had the ability to remove material off of a hoof. And in some cases, that material is as hard as concrete. We had to be able to have a tool that was powerful enough that we could remove that material, but at the same time, it couldn't weigh more than 1 pound. If it weighed more than that, you couldn't effectively hold it for long periods of time to be able to use the tool. The shape of the tool has to fit your hand, and also the size of the tool. It's a real close quarter work, so you could not have tools that was real long.
Animals have their own, different but somewhat similar needs when it comes to hoof trimming.
Every animal has different requirements because of the way the hoof is shaped. A cow's hoof it has 2 toes and it's flat. It's very easy to remove material off of that because there's really nothing that impedes you're moving that chainsaw disc across that. It's a flat surface. A horse, on the other hand, is an area where the hoof is in a U shape, just like you see a horseshoe, and in the middle of it, it's called a frog. Well, you have to work around that piece. You don't cut on the frog, so you're confined. You have to be very precise when you trim against that piece. You have to work the hoof wall on the outside, so there's a lot of different variables to that. So we can use the chainsaw blade. The chainsaw blade is the primary trimming disc that we have. We developed that for use in the dairy industry, and then we realized that what we had done was that we had developed a tool that could be used with the right attachment on any animal.
It's just a better job. A lot of horses that you have, you really can't get out what you need to with the hoof knife that you can get out with the electric hoof knife. The electric hoof knife, you can tape and you can cup them out 110% better than you can with a knife because of the hardness of the sole and the hardness of the shell. And you can do a better job. You can do a lot of things with this that you can't do the old way.
The hand tool that people use for the goat industry is a pair of shears, like you would use in a garden. And the problem with that is that it's very intense, very hard to use to cut that hard material. Your hands hurt. I developed a blade that can be used to remove that material through abrasion. With the goats and sheep, one of the problems they have is by using a hand shear, they leave ridges between the bottom of the goat's hoof, which they call the pad, and where the hoof wall is at. When you use a pair of shears, you're not able to get it smooth right there at the point between the hoof material and the pad. That leaves areas that contaminants can get into, and that leads to foot rot. My tool, because it's an abrasive type removal, takes that down to where it's very smooth and doesn't leave any areas for that to happen. So we really do eliminate a lot of the hoof rot problems that the goat and the sheep people have.
The natural thing for any hoofed animal would be to be on rock or something that would keep their hooves trimmed to a normal length. And of course we don't have that with the clay and the sand here. So by us trimming them and keeping them at a normal, smooth, what their actual hoof should look like, it's much safer for them, and they won't develop any limps or any problems with their hips or their legs. I also will schedule trimming a little more often because it's so much easier. And there's a lot less stress on the goats. They're up there, we get them trimmed in minutes, and then they're down and off, and they haven't even finished their bowl of food, so they're happy.
On 6-month-old colts, all the way up to 30-year-old horses, I've never quicked an animal with this tool. Now, all horses are different, I understand that, but most horses, after you work this machine on them once or twice, they all agree with it. It ain't real loud, it's real smooth, there's no hand pressure, there's no hard working it. If you'll just hold the machine there real lightly, the machine will do its own job.
You can rest the chainsaw blade on a hoof and it won't cut unless you put a little bit of pressure on it. So because of that, it is extremely controllable because the tool is not fighting the user. Once you've gotten to the point where you're using it quite often, then you get to a point where it's basically the only tool that you need.
It's probably the friendliest thing that I've found to use on a goat or on our cattle to treat abscesses and ulcers. On the heels of the feet on the goat, and where they're soft, it bulged up like a marshmallow. We was just scared we was going to cut them, get too much of it. And with the electric hoof knife, you can go in and ease it off. It's almost like using a surgical tool. When you get to taking out the ulcer side around, you can go in and feather it out. You're not as likely to get too deep in there and get into the corium of the foot. You can clean the radius out a lot better around the foot. With an abscess, you can go in. When you have a honeycomb shell, you can go in and clean all of this out. It leaves a nice job. So we hadn't cut one with it, and that's helped us. We've trimmed some goats today at a show and carried them to the show ring with it. I've even started my 11-year-old daughter. She wanted to know could she trim them, and I told her yes, sir. They're your show goats, so you need to learn how. It's made it so much easier on us.
Because of the ease of use, the tool enables individuals suffering from joint and muscular ailments to trim hooves with ease and control, unlike ever before.
People with arthritic hands, lupus, and bad backs, it has really helped them because there's no strain on your body when you're using it. Their backs, I have people tell me all the time that their backs are not sore, their hands don't cramp anymore. For women, It has really been a changing experience for them because most women have not been able to use a manual hoof knife. They just don't have the strength to do it. And our tool is very easy, very comfortable for them to use. So I see it opening a new career for women in farriers and hoof trimming because with this tool they'll be able to do it themselves.
And people every day send us emails and write us letters and phone calls thanking us for coming up with this, for introducing this to the market, how it has absolutely changed their life as it concerns trimming. A lot of older people, like in their 60s, 70s, 80s, use this tool. They don't want to quit taking care of their animals, but physically they've gotten to the point where they just can't do it with a hand tool. So this tool is a revelation of use. And the more that people understand the tool and the more people use the tool, it's going to continue to grow in use. That's what encourages me, is the fact that we've developed a tool that really is a tremendous asset for the animal. It really does promote better hoof health for the animal. But it also promotes the health of the end user, the people that are actually using that tool to accomplish that job.
For more information, please visit www.electrichoofknife.us or call 877-320-8203.